Alrighty, everybody is here, so let's get started. Good morning, everyone. I hope today will be a fun and interesting day, because today we're going to talk about everything going wrong. And for some strange reason, humans have this perverse attitude that they find that entertaining. Right? I don't know what it is, but especially when it comes to logic and studying arguments, being able to respond to somebody and say, that was great. That was a perfectly coherent, valid, sound argument from you. Wonderful job. You get a little bit of satisfaction out of that. But what people more often find much more satisfying is being able to tell somebody, you did a terrible job. That was awful. You're wrong, and here's why. I don't know what it is. People like to point out when other people are wrong. However, people very rarely like when they themselves are pointed out as wrong. So, we're going to have to take the good with the bad today. Because we got to talk about the most common ways of using logic wrong. And actually, before I get to those specific ones, let me go big picture here. The Wikipedia list of fallacies. Right? What is a fallacy? Right? It's anything that is logically incorrect. Emphasis on the logically part. It doesn't mean you're inherently wrong. It just means the logic doesn't line up. You didn't have a valid argument. That's it. That's all we're pointing out here today. Okay? Okay? All forms of human communication can contain fallacies. It's super common. You hear it all the time. Right? Especially if you turn on any kind of news channel, you'll have some pundit saying, oh, this guy was wrong about that thing, and oh, they thought this, but it turns out that. Right? All these arguments back and forth that you hear in the media, right? A lot of them are calling people out on their logical fallacies. It's because they didn't follow the logic. But if you've done any sort of study into argument forms in English class, you'll know that logic isn't the only way to convince somebody of something. Right? There's the whole logos, ethos, and pathos bit. Right? The ethos and pathos we're not covering here. We don't talk about that. That can totally be used to help actually convince a person. We're just talking about the logic. Where did the logic go wrong? And within the realm of where the logic goes wrong, they can be, I like this bit, they can be classified. Come on, highlight, there we go. They can be classified by their structure or content. And the content is more of what you would see on the study.com lessons this week. If you've already looked at those or you haven't gotten to them yet, that's what you'll see there. They talk about things like, say, a straw man argument, or what were some other good ones? Double counting, false authority, right? Using an expert. Oh, just because the expert says it doesn't make it true, right? That kind of thing. That's a logical fallacy. This statement is true because so-and-so said it. That's not one of our laws of logic. Nowhere in modus ponens, modus tollens did that list say anything about trust the experts on this. Again, doesn't mean it's a bad argument, just means it's not a logical one. What we're going to focus on today in class, in my opinion, are the more important, the formal fallacies, because they have to do with the structure. Remember how I was saying you can follow the logic of anything, even if you know nothing about the topic, just by following the structure. And so these, in my experience, have been the most common mistakes students will make in doing their logic work here in math class. Because when you're reading a math paper and working on a worksheet, answering a math problem, You don't have any of that appeal to authority and straw man argument and any of those other fallacies that involve people. All you have is the structure. Okay? So, with that said, our sheet for today is going to be identifying these two mistakes. The first, affirming the consequent, and the second, denying the antecedent. These are both two different opposites of accepted laws of logic. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. Affirming the consequent. I've defined it for you here. This is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. The logical fallacy of inferring the truth of the antecedent of an implication from the truth of the consequent. And they give us a nice example. If it rains, then the game is canceled. The game has been canceled. Oh, therefore it has rained. Right? How many times did we see this problem going over homework questions? Like, wait a minute. Just because the game has been canceled doesn't mean it had to have rained. We know raining would cause canceling, but we didn't say raining is the only way that could be canceled. Maybe the game is canceled because nobody showed up. Right? Maybe the game is canceled due to some other weather-related phenomena. Right? There could be other reasons. If there are other reasons, your problem is most likely affirming the consequent. Right? Structurally, this is taking if P then Q, Q, and concluding P. Because we affirmed, that is to say, we restated the consequent, the conclusion of our conditional. Right? That is not one of our laws of logic. It's almost like modus tollens. It's working backwards, but it didn't negate anything. Affirming the consequent could also be described as assuming the converse is true. Remember the converse being if Q, then P. What we have falsely thought here is if it rains, then the game is canceled. Oh, that must mean if the game is canceled, then it was raining. That's not always the case. It's often not the case at all. Yet many, many people fall for that trap. Not just students. Perfectly smart adults fall for this all the time in many situations. Affirming the consequent is, in my opinion, probably the most common structural logical fallacy. Denying the antecedent is much like it. Denying the antecedent, notice it's we've reversed both terms here. It's the logical fallacy of inferring the negation of the consequent of an implication from the negation of the antecedent. As in, if it rains, then the game is canceled. But it is not raining, therefore the game is not canceled. Hooray! Wait a minute. Again, we're assuming that there's no other way that the game could have been canceled here. This is saying if P, then Q, and not P, therefore not Q. These are, of course, wrong. You could also describe denying the antecedent as assuming the inverse is true. Remember, the inverse would say, if not P, then not Q. Inverse puts the negation on both of them, but keeps them in the same order. So as we've said way back when introducing inverse, converse, and contrapositive, inverse, not necessarily true. That leads to a logical fallacy. Converse, not necessarily true, leads to a logical fallacy. Only if you did both operations, reversed the order and negated, you get the contrapositive. That one is logically consistent. Any questions about these two major logical fallacies? Okay. For our practice then today, I have gone back through prior exercises and plucked what are mostly invalid arguments. There might be an actual valid or two one thrown in there. If you find a valid one, go ahead and write valid. But otherwise, you're going to identify what is wrong with these statements. Did they deny the antecedent? You can abbreviate that DA. Or did they affirm the consequent? You can abbreviate that AC. Right? Yell at these people. Get upset at whoever wrote and came up with this terrible, awful argument and say, no, you're wrong, here's why. You have fallen for the oldest trick in the book. Okay, not exactly the oldest trick in the book, but a classic logical fallacy. You're affirming the consequent. How dare you? Right? Have some fun with it. Yell at them for being wrong. And then maybe pause and be a little introspective for a moment, be like, oh, wait, well, maybe I've done that a couple times on the homework. And now I think that we've called these wrong forms with a name, you can better identify when you yourself are making that mistake and stop before you write it down. Say, ooh, wait, nope, I can't conclude this. That would be denying the antecedent. I better find another way. Okay? All right. That's all I've got for you today then. Reminder, study guide review of the whole quarter goes up Friday morning. Next week, Friday, is your online test, and that'll have short answer or like multiple choice style questions. Next week, Wednesday, you will have the written portion, which you'll do stuff much like yesterday, where you'll write out a full argument. It'll be a little more long form on a Google Doc. Okay? Because of that assessment time, I am asking all colors to report in next Wednesday. Please let me know via email ahead of time if you have a scheduling conflict and need to schedule that for a later time. Okay? But it is part of your test grade, therefore it will be time restricted. Okay? Not just, here's an assignment, take care of it till the end of the day. No, you have within a certain time window to complete it. Okay, so you have to let me know if that's going to be a problem. Otherwise, I think that's all my reminders I need to hit you with. I'll leave you the rest of the class time to take care of these.